In the year 6374, there was no sound, there was no feeling, all was black. My senses slowly returned to me. I felt disoriented. Faintly at first, then louder and louder, I could hear voices and men barking orders. I looked around and noticed I was in a cavern. I heard a refined male voice.
Hainsworth, what are you doing here? We've taken shelter to avoid Karaganda and his men.
Was I dreaming? Nothing seemed to make sense. I heard these voices, but who were they? Where was I? A second man responded to the first.
Brother, you are here for the one imprisoned in this ancient cave. Don't deny it. You seek this power. Do not fret, Shelter. There is nothing to fear from me. I have come for the earrings that Inez wears. Your people call them the Tears of Dova. Hand over the earrings, and we will leave you to your dank cave and ancient tomb.
How much time has passed since we battled Vlad? The black hole. How did I get to this place? I silently crept around on a high ledge and peered down into a cavernous room. I saw soldiers clearly on two opposing sides. On one side, the warriors wore mostly purple and a little bit of brown on their armor. On the other side, the soldiers donned light blue, pink, and white. Both sides held unfamiliar battle standards and wore queer sigils on their clothing and armor. A brown snake on a purple background and a burning white tower on a light blue background with a pink border. I noticed two enormous Goliaths with one of the groups, the blue and pink. And more importantly, I saw a beautiful elvish woman wearing a pink dress and a golden crown. The woman wore pale pink square-shaped earrings that dazzled in the low light of lit torches. My eyes locked onto her, and my heart melted. With one glance, I became overwhelmed by her cuteness and innocence. This elf was the most beautiful girl in the world. Her eyes fluttered shyly, and she spoke in a thick accent that I did not recognize.
Hainsworth, I can't give you these earrings. They were a gift from my father, shortly before he died. You've heard the sad tale of Lord Cordova, executed by the Fury Lords on Dilly Road. Did you? The incident with my sister? It was you who killed Shalsis. You saw her wearing the Tears of Dova that night. Was that why? You slayed your host and acted like a common thief, a dishonorable cutthroat. We could have allied against the Fury Lords and taken this land back. We could have.
The man called Hainsworth answered, interrupting the beautiful elven woman.
It matters not how you came across the earrings. I need them if I'm to save the world. Hand them over. I'll take them by force if need be.
I surveyed the room and saw a man in black armor. A black bird surrounded by flames was embossed on his chest in gemstones. I observed a man with star tattoos on his face, as well as an elder, gray-haired, deranged-looking man with a giant scythe. There was a demonic-looking, heavily armored being holding a great axe. These men stood behind the one called Hainsworth. Hainsworth and his men made me feel uneasy. On the other side of the room, I saw the two Goliaths. There was a young, ebony-faced human knight. I observed a large, elvish knight, tall and powerful, wearing golden armor. I saw a wizened gnome wearing yellow robes. There was a dwarf in blue armor holding two throwing knives with a beer sigil adorned on each pommel. The dwarf appeared to be drunk. These warriors stood behind the adorable elvish woman. At her side was the first man who spoke, Lord Shelter. He appeared to be a very distinguished-looking elf, with a light blue cape and pink plate armor. The distinguished elf spoke.
Damn you, Hainsworth. If you want our queen's earrings...
Shelter drew his sword, and so did both knights standing behind the elvish woman.
Come and take them.
Hainsworth twitched his upper lip and moved his stupid-looking mustache up and down and side to side.
Then take them I shall. Zealots, advance! Bring chaos!
A battle between the two sides began. Both knights charged the man in black armor, the one with the burning bird embossed on his chest. They raised their blades and came down at him with a furious combination of strikes. The black armor warrior easily parried both of them at once. The man with the star tattoos on his face reached into a small leather pouch and pulled out a handful of brown dust. He blew it into the air and it enveloped a small group of charging soldiers. The advancing men stopped in their tracks, coughing. The soldiers seemed disoriented and unable to discern what was around them. The tattooed man casually walked up to the first enemy soldier and stabbed him in the neck with his dagger. He drew a jeweled saber and continued on to methodically cut down each afflicted foe with zero resistance. Kevlian thought to himself, whatever concoction that dust was made of must have been created with some kind of powerful alchemy. The crazed-looking, gray-haired man laughed maniacally while swinging his scythe at soldiers near him, lopping off limbs and spraying blood in all directions. His enemy struggled to even get anywhere near him. Both Goliaths flanked the heavily armored demonic warrior. One of them wound up and punched downwards at the armored demon, but the dark warrior reached out with an open palm and caught the blow with a clawed hand. The demon flicked his own wrist and easily tossed the Goliath's hand to the side, sending the enormous fighter stumbling off balance. The other Goliath clasped both hands overhead in an axe-handle blow and brought his fist down towards his dark enemy.
Kill him! Kill Lord Shelter!
Kill him!
Kill
Lord Shelter!
Kill Lord Shelter!
Kill him! Kill Lord Shelter!
Soldiers with the snake sigil shouted.
Chaos! Chaos prevails!
Chaos! Chaos prevails!
Chaos prevails! Chaos! Chaos prevails!
The distinguished noble-looking elf, Lord Shelter, was surrounded by a group of brown and purple-clad soldiers. Shelter tried his best to fight through them. He parried, he slashed, he ducked, he stabbed, but he could not stop the scene that was unfolding before him. He saw Hainsworth slowly walk past the thick of the fighting, heading straight for the one I later learned was called Inez.
Hainsworth, stop! Your fight is with me.
Shouted the embattled high elf. As Hainsworth passed Shelter's embattled position, he turned to the elf, twitched his mustache, and smiled. He looked back towards the elvish woman, and suddenly sprinted towards her, drawing the rapier from his sword belt. Inez shrieked and backed away as Haines reached her, drawing back to deliver a fatal thrust with his weapon. A lightning blade flashed out of nowhere and parried the thrust. Hainsworth was taken aback. He angrily snarled in a frustrated tone.
Ah, who is this silly fool? Come to meddle in my affairs.
I looked down at my hands and saw I was tightly gripping my lightning blade. I hadn't consciously decided to act. Moving to protect this elvish woman was pure instinct. "You will not harm this girl, my lady. I will protect you." My lightning blade danced through the air towards my opponent, but I found I was utterly outmatched by Haynes's quick, snake-like strikes. I could not properly parry the flurry of jabs from the Lord of Chaos. Glancing blows left gashes and cuts on my arms, ribs, and shoulders as I struggled to keep up with the rhythm of my opponent's strikes. I leapt backwards, drew out my trusty bow, Dragon Rend, and deftly pulled back on the string, firing a rapid barrage of arrows. My aim was true, but Hainsworth easily dodged each projectile, chuckling to himself arrogantly as he sidestepped and ducked under my relentless ranged attacks. Haynes unexpectedly moved in after one of my shots, raising his blade for another barrage of rapier jabs, but, thinking quickly, I swiftly transitioned and pivoted to Hainsworth's side, catching him off guard.
Damn, this one is pretty good,
Gasped Haynes. I drew out my lightning net and hurled it at the surprised Hainsworth, catching and binding him inside. Hainsworth fell to the ground, restrained by the net. Electricity pulsed through him, delivering painful shocks. I drew my lightning blade once more, holding it out towards my foe, and quietly whispered, Celestas. I raised my lightning blade into the air, about to strike a fatal blow on my opponent, when a figure suddenly appeared to my flank, materializing out of a shadow. I sensed this new presence and began to turn towards it, just as a flaming fist hurtled at my face. I was just barely able to get Ryan, my shield, up in time, and the flaming fist smashed into it with tremendous power. The force of the blow lifted me off my feet and sent me flying across the cavern, slamming my half-elf body into a stone wall. The breath was knocked from my lungs, and stars clouded my vision for a brief moment. I looked up at the figure, now across the cavern, and saw flames from my attacker's gauntlet shooting up high into the air, nearly touching the cavern's ceiling. I shakily rose to my feet. I detected a sizzling sound coming from Ryan and noticed a mist evaporating from the shield's surface. Ryan was steaming from the intense heat of the flaming gauntlet. I heard the pained voice of Ryan in my head.
Master, he smells familiar.
Recognizing the flaming gauntlet, I thought to myself, no, it can't be him, could it? The figure turned into a blur and disappeared. Then he reappeared 30 feet closer to me and off to the left. It must be. No one else has such incredible speed. The figure blurred again and appeared 15 feet closer, this time off to the right. With purpose and determination, I moved forward, putting away Ryan and drawing Dragon Rend. I notched an arrow and fired it at my foe's head. The trajectory of my shot was perfect. The arrowhead was a hair from striking home when the man's hand snapped up and caught the projectile in midair. He dropped the arrow to the ground, discarding it. I rushed towards my opponent to engage him in close combat, but once again, the man blurred out of sight. While still advancing, I notched an arrow, then stopped, pivoted, and aimed to the left, just as the figure blurred into sight. The figure's flaming fist was hurtling towards my face with mind-blowing speed, but stopped, millimeters before striking true. My arrow was notched tight on Dragon Rend's bowstring, and the arrowhead was also mere millimeters short from the figure's face. The two of us were stuck in a stalemate. I addressed my old friend. It is you, Bretson. Bretson answered.
Graystone.
A loud ruckus, hoofbeats and men shouting could be heard elsewhere in this cavern. A flood of red and gold armored soldiers entered the caves, carrying unfamiliar banners. Leading them was a man atop a horse wearing all red armor. The other men in the cave whispered nervously, and Kevlian heard several of them mention the name Karaganda.
Karaganda. It's Karaganda.
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 It's Karaganda.
It's Karaganda.
The red-armored man on the horse shouted loudly with a command presence.
Lady Inez, Hainsworth, you are traitors to Vigor's rule, and I hereby sentence you to death. The rest of you, lay down your arms and submit to Vigor's will.
Bretza broke off from our stalemate, and I saw all the men that were previously fighting scattering like roaches. A soldier called out to me.
Ranger, this way.
I saw a dwarf wearing all blue armor, motioning for me to follow. Shilter bellowed.
Come with us, elf. Help us protect our queen.
I followed them.
Reach for my hand, I'll soar away.